And this morning we woke up to the coldest day of the year so far. It's in the mid-20s. The pond has ice on it, and we're very lucky because we can plan a day to work indoors all day. We have our carbon fiber part to work on. We have things that are ready to buff, and we don't have to go outside and paint when it's below freezing like this. And this time of year when it's this cold, whoo, oh boy, I love having jobs to do in the cellar where it's warm. And the stuff we painted the other day has been sitting out in the garage for a couple days, and it's because of the temperature, it has done the slow dry, and that's ready to put down by the heating vent. And we are ready. I even put an extra coat on the fender. We are ready for some buffing this afternoon, or maybe tomorrow. I don't know, but when a paint dries up like that, it's a couple of days later, it's beautiful to buff. Now the part we made yesterday, the carbon fiber part, has to fit into these basically these tangs, and there's some little tangs here and here. So when I get the part shaped and sanded, I have to come out here and make sure it snaps right back in because it's only held on with the two Zeus fittings. So that might be a little challenging. I'm going to have to be very careful not to change the shape of those tabs. And a big congratulations to Turbo Steve, who's been sending us pictures from the Javits show. And he apparently had the best time of his life. And this is the time of year the pond usually freezes over. Of course, if you know about ponds, you know I have the waterfall running. But eventually I'm going to have to put in the bubblers that keep a hole in the ice. Or what will happen? The fish will all die. So now under the trusty heating vent, this has been sitting overnight. Oh, that hardened up. We're going to work on that first thing this morning. I put the stuff from the garage under the heating vent too. We got some testing to do on that. That'd definitely be dry. Like I said, I put an extra coat on the fender just because I had the material left in the gun from yesterday or the day before. Losing track of the days here in this wonderful winter. Anyway, I like to look over the parts this morning. Most of these are ready to buff now. Some of them are buffed. And I can go through that inventory because I don't want to go outside today. That's the whole thing. In the 20s, when the wind is blowing and the pond is frozen, it's really nice to have a can of that CR4 buffing compound and a big cup of coffee, which I'm going to have right now. Now I always think you're supposed to let this dry 24 hours, but under a heating vent it doesn't really take 24 hours, but we'll be ready to work on it. But the most important thing will be those little tabs, that way that snaps in. I got to be really careful cutting that extra carbon fiber off, and we'll do it on video. And I've got to talk to John. He sent this very low stick tape to try when I pull that stencil apart, and this is the key thing here. These are touch-up pens for if we can't get the lettering edges to be exactly right, and this is an old modeling trick, and we'll try to show that, of course, too. More things to experiment, more things to test, more coffee to drink. Of course, no morning would be complete without our birds visiting us while I'm having my coffee. And I think if you live in a cold weather climate, you know what that coffee tastes like. And because it's still a Christmas season here, I'm sure somewhere in the course of the day Karen's going to want to do some decorating or some making soup or some, I don't know. Every day we try to make it just a little bit different. Now as I'm looking at the part, it's dried up overnight. I had it up on some coffee cans so it would be closer to the actual heating vent. I wanted to look at, well, I have to make a decision whether I'm going to pull this can off. It'd be easier to work on this while it's attached to the can or not. I guess I can take the can off for now. It's really not a big deal to do that with. That's why we use that hot glue. You could use any kind of glue. We'll take that off with a razor later. The main thing is where these little tabs are, and it looks like this just worked out perfect. I don't have any interference with the tabs. Now I can take some, and by the way, this is all the information you want to know if you're doing your first new to carbon fiber. These things are now razor blades. When you have the edge where that hair comes off, you may as well consider that you have a handful of razor blades here. So I want to trim this back maybe within 1/8 of an inch, and the rest I can do with a Dremel tool. But I want to be real careful I don't make a problem with those little tabs, because in the end this has to fit right back on where it goes. And we have to account for the thickness of the material. Okay, with all the extra trimmed off, now I got to set up a Dremel tool to do the final little trimming. So this is the burr that seems to work the best on the Dremel tool for cutting away that fiberglass, and relatively standard Dremel tool, but the rest of it we have to do by hand. And of course, wear a mask when you use the Dremel tool. Now the next part of the job is I want to cut off some, and this is 180 grit Norton industrial sandpaper. It's really good for roughing in the edges of carbon fiber. And thank you, Dave Midgley. This was a Dave Midgley, what shall we call it, Christmas present. Anyway, the whole idea here is I want to use a hard block. Anything that's a straight edge, this will help me get the straight edge in. I want to get all the edges in before I do the upper finish, the part that we're going to actually see. Because what I want to do before we actually do it is I want to go out to the garage and make sure this part, I could get rid of this, and just alcohol takes that right off, by the way. And I want to get all these tabs, find all the little drools and everything off of them, because that part now has got to snap right in, and our two Zeus fittings. I don't want to compromise that at all, because we're going to see this part through the windshield. So the next step is I'm going to take the sanding block outside to the garage and take the two Zeus fittings and make sure that all these little tabs, everything fits. And if I have a clearance issue, I can just sand until I get a nice tight fit. It's like a little fine tuning. I want to make sure that fits perfectly before I do the rest of the cosmetic sanding. All right, it's going to require just a little bit of sanding around some of the edges to get the fit just perfect. That's why I brought the sanding block out here. So I'm happy that all the tabs and all the fits are reasonably nice, and well, we didn't distort anything. Now it's time to put a finish on that part, the part we're going to see. Now, as soon as I see I'm sanded into the cloth itself, see where I've started going through, it's time to wet sand it. Get a nice tooth on this with some 220 and get a coat of well, we're going to get a coat of automotive clear on it, even though it's really cold out there. I want to get some clear on here. Now this step, we don't really need to do much. We just need to get a nice tooth on this so that our first coat of clear sticks. I don't have to be too fussy, because we're going to block sand this out probably several more times with the clear coats on it. But as you see with the clear, well, you can see where we might be prone to sand through. And even if there's a couple little divots in this, it doesn't matter. They'll fill up with clear. But I don't want to take a chance. The thing I don't want to do is take a chance on going down and cutting through and coming through to the other side of the carbon fiber. And so far, looks like I'm lucky. And believe me, the first time you cut through, then you got to go back all the way up to this, and it's really annoying. You got to go back and, well, it's not funny when it happens. I better not laugh. It may happen today. But anyway, it's so cold out there, but yet I feel like I'm excited about seeing this part. It fit perfectly. It was not a problem at all. I thought it might be. Because sometimes when you put carbon fiber on a part and use heat, you bend it or twist it or something. Obviously, that's not going to be a problem. So we'll spend a little time here, get this all ready, mix up some clear, and try to get 3 coats of clear, 20 minutes to a half hour, maybe even 45 minutes today, considering the temperature. And while that's drying in between coats, we'll try to get some of our parts buffed out. So it'll be a win-win, win-win. Sound like a football player here. Anyway, when this has got a real nice shiny finish on it, it'll really be, I think it's going to add a nice dimension to the bike. But again, if I don't like it, it's a very inexpensive part to get from Partzilla. So now what I'm trying to do on this video is pass on useful information that if you want to make a part like this, even if it's an office chair or a cowboy hat or something, you want to have that carbon fiber look. Well, we're coming up on a step that it took me a lot of time to figure out how to work around it. What's going to happen, and I'm not done sanding this yet, but I thought I didn't want to let this thought not get put on a video because a lot of times it's a useful thought. If you look at this part, now I'm not going to sand down through to where there are no little divots. You see there are little divots there every once in a while because then you run this high risk thing that you're going to go down through the carbon and have a glitchy looking thing there. It's much better to put more finish on because we're not concerned. This is not a model airplane. We don't care what it weighs. But what is going to happen inevitably whenever I've used any carbon fiber? You go to put the first coat of finish on it. Now, it's not a problem at all if you're going to paint the part. Because then you prime it. The prime seals it. Well, we don't have the option of seal in this. So we're going to try to put the clear, the Gavco clear on. And what's going to happen is going to be fisheyes. More than likely right where these little divots are. Because who knows? There's mystery wherever you can tell that I've gone through this before. But I found this, what I think is a usable solution. And what you do, I got to make a handle for this part so I can hold it. I can't hang it by this. It's going to be a problem. I want to make some kind of, and I don't know if I can use the can again or what. But here's the point that I'm making. And this is going to be the biggest challenge you have if you make your part. You're going to want to, in essence, clear coat it and get rid of the fisheyes. What will happen if you don't get rid of the fisheyes and you put your second coat of clear, the fisheyes will still be there. The third coat, they'll still be there. So what I found works a lot of times, not always, but it's a really good trick. Take a clean paper towel when you go to put the first coat. Put the first coat on drippy, drooly, wet. Let it drool down the edges and wipe it off. Let it get that you can just touch your finger to it and it's like fly paper. Wipe it some more. Then put on a coat, another coat. You'll see a lot of the fisheyes will be gone. It's still a lot of fisheyes. Do it again. Sometimes I've had to do it 4, 5, 6 times. But eventually you'll somehow, that draws out the silicone or whatever's in that causes the fisheye. So that is, of the whole things on the video, and I'm trying to include everything, that is the most difficult one to deal with. If you're going to do what I'm doing, is I'm leaving a little bit of the texture on here because I really don't want to go through. I've done it before, and then I got to go through the whole process I went through yesterday, putting another coat on top of this. So let's see if it's our lucky day. And that is, by the way, really, really good information. Not sure you'll find that anywhere else on the internet. Now, once again, I want to have a way of holding this part. I got a little piece of scrap aluminum here. I can make a tab. I want to put it in a vise so that I can let it sit in a flat plane, because I'm going to probably put enough clear on here that may even get runs or whatever. It won't matter. I want to fill in all these divots. So having in fact, I could do it this way, probably be easier. It can go out that way then. Yeah. A lot of this stuff you have to invent along the way. We call it the Invent Along the Way program. And Good old-fashioned hot glue. You can douse it with alcohol and it comes right off, or you can grind it off, whatever. Now I want to see if, believe it or not, a part like this is always a challenge to hold it. Holding it, just like machine shop work. When I got involved in being a partner in a machine shop years ago with Joe Cassie, he always used to say, okay, how are you going to hold that part? And I'd look at it, especially in a Bridgeport or something, how are you going to hold that part? Okay, we got it relatively level, relatively stable. Now we can hold the part. Now the challenge is to try to minimize the fisheyes. That's always a challenge when you're doing anything carbon fiber, getting that first thing to stick, and sometimes it sticks. I don't know if it's the material. They put some kind of a material in with the carbon, and where it comes through it, who knows? It's not important to know. It's important to know how to fix it. This is ordinary prep wall. And actually, this brings back a lot of memories of when I made the Tiger Cat. All my modeling friends will know what this is. Made the Tiger Cat fuselage, pulled it out of the mold, and no matter what I did, there was not a chance on earth I wasn't going to have fisheyes on that carbon fiber that we used at that time, and who knows what that reason is. But the solution was I silk spanned over it. See, but the problem is I can't silk span over this part. So I'm just going to go as much as I can. I've done everything. I've cleaned it with simple green. I've sanded it. I've done just about everything you can possibly do to keep the fisheyes to a minimum, but I think the reality is I'm going to have to wipe it a few times, and so I'll keep some clean paper towels with me. And the clear that we're going to use is Gavco with the fast activator. You can copy the numbers off that if it means anything, but the main thing is this is not unique. It's not a whole lot different than the 5-star, which you can just buy off the internet too. Now I don't see any fisheyes at all. It might be my lucky day. That's a first dry coat. Very, very little material is on there now. I'm going to let that sit. Of course, the trick here, go have another cup of coffee. Don't rush this. 15-20 minutes between coats. Come out, put a second coat on, a wet coat, and we'll see how that goes. Now I'm not sure, it looks like we got a couple of fisheyes up in this area, but I'm just going to see if they go away as we put the second, third, fourth coats on. I don't know how many coats we can get on this, but we'll see. And if they get worse, we just wipe it all off with acetone and start all over again. And that usually works. Now I did see enough fisheyes on here that I wanted to see if this old trick works. If it works any better, I don't know. It's really not high tech, and if it doesn't work, you're no worse off than you were, that's for sure. And since we're going to sand this coat, we don't even need it to be on. You actually could put it on with a brush if you wanted to. Now you actually can do this as many times as you want. It doesn't seem like, and what I'll do is wipe this with acetone one more time, because each time it gets a little better. I don't know why. And that is a really good trick. Of all the problems you ever have making your own carbon fiber parts, the fisheyes are right up there at the top of the list. At least they were for me. So we'll go back again, and I'll do this as many times as necessary until I can get the material to lay down with a minimum of fisheyes. time we do that, it gets better and better. So if this one doesn't work, well, boy, that carbon fiber looks so nice out in the sun. Wait till we get the full clear finish on it. All right, we're going to put that aside, let that dry a little bit. You got to be patient. So I wanted to explain this because this is really good information. This is really the stuff you watch these crazy windy videos for. That part, the things that'll work in your favor are, if you have a fisheye issue, of course you saw me wipe it down 2 or 3 times, that helps. What helps is pre-warm the part, again, hair dryer, so it's not super cold. Now it's just above freezing now. It's about 33 degrees. So here's what really will work. Shoot the first coat on really light, not a big wet coat. A big wet coat tends to make fisheyes. Like an airbrush coat, and come right down and dry it. Force dry it. You only need to do that with the first coat, because what that first coat does then, it skins over the fisheye. And I think, this is really crude, but I've bought at least 10 different things that go into paint that are supposed to avoid fisheyes. And none of them work, at least on my stuff. So I know from time to time, now we got to the point where the next coat of paint I put on this, the fisheyes will be pin drops. The next ones, most of them will go away. I may have to put 5 coats on, but then when I wet, I'll let this dry an extra day, wet sand it out. But if you know when you make your part, you're going to be able to solve that fisheye issue, send me 20 bucks. I still have the tiniest little pinholes of fisheyes up there, but they're going to fill in as I wet sand this. So I will get 2 more coats on this, maybe 3. Just build it up. And this temperature out here, I'll let it sit out here 45 minutes. But that weave is going to look really, really nice when this is done. But that fisheyes, that can make you crazy, boy. When you're trying to learn about carbon fiber, that's the one thing you almost never, nobody wants to share that information once they figure out how to do it. Now after the first 2 coats, I brought this in, put it under the heating vent, thinking maybe that'll dry up. And I can get the third, maybe even put 4 coats on, I don't know. I'm still debating it, but boy, the weave is flawless here. And we know it fits perfectly, again. So anytime I put into this, the final finish, the buffing, even if it takes an extra day, I don't care. That will be a unique part, ultimately, on this restoration. That is the part we did. We did our little test with the vinyl, the Michaels vinyl, I'll call it for lack of a better word. I want to see, I'm just pulling up the back masking here, and I'll pull this up with a little bit of heat. See how that plays out. I have that material from John, that clear tape that I'll test next time I do a test on this. And the primary thing today was I wanted to get the clear on that nose piece that goes in the fairing, and that looks like it's in the bank except for just spraying some more clear. But that, boy, that fish, I think that can kill your enthusiasm for working with carbon fiber. But I'm sure there are better ways around it. I'm sure Boeing has a better way around it, but I don't. See, that's the problem. So, like anything, I want to just see, the purpose of this is the edging. I want to see the edging. And again, you know, the rules of engagement, you always want it to be hot. You want to peel it slowly. Heat is always your friend when you're pulling up tape or masking or anything. And I would guess, right now, I would look at that and I'd say, that cannot be better. That is, you can't make it better than that. So that Michaels stuff looks like it's going to be a winning combination. Now, I'm going to do, just to be a wise guy, I'm going to pull this one up without any heat. Although probably it's a little, it's 65 degrees in here, so let's see if it really does make any difference. Now, a lot of times you do this and you think, oh, I don't ever have to use heat again. So you go pull up some more tape and the heat is always your friend. Now, to be honest, it came up pretty good. I can get this out. I need to get little baby fingertips in there and a little razor blade or something. But basically it's the edging. The edging, for all purposes, is perfect. That edging with that Michaels stuff is about as good as anything I've ever had. I think that we are good to go with that. And I think that's just one more piece of the puzzle. Actually, it's a giant puzzle that we're trying to come up with solutions for problems that, well, I hope that information works well for a lot of people too that want to do these custom logos. Now, is there anything more beautiful than when the sun hits that weave on the carbon fiber? Oh my God, does that look nice. I think that's going to be coming through the windshield of the motorcycle when you look at it, surrounded by the flat black and then into the gloss black with the gold. Oh, now, whatever happens now, we don't care. We got the fisheyes buried and we can buff that out 3-4 days from now. Now, after putting all that clear on, I still have a little bit in the gun. I figured I'd do a little test here just to see if I can bury these the little edges and then report back to John how this is all working out. I always like seeing how things are going to look with the clear on them. And even though that's not really the end, that's not the real lettering we're going to do, I'm sure we'll even come up with something better. Knowing John, I think we're going to even come up with something better. But in the meantime, this is a good fallback anyway, even if we don't come up with something better. And we used up the clear that we had in the gun, so that's salami always tastes better when it's free. And here we are with a coat of clear drying up. And it's always a really good feeling if at the end of the day of spraying a lot of clear. Oh boy, I just love, when I clean the gun, it's like putting your head on a pillow. This has been a really productive day. I thought I'd have time for doing some buffing today. Well, that's not going to happen. But we did wind up using all the clear. I got the emblem. I really feel like we made progress. And that fisheye thing is a monster. That's a monster that can ruin your whole enthusiasm for painting. Once you have fisheyes, you just go crazy. You can't get rid of them. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.